-1. -2. -3. Let's go, baby!
Hey there, it's your old friend Theta, the monotone messiah. Today we're going to talk about what causes caps. If you aren't sure what a cap is, stop watching this video right now and go watch my video on capping, which is called How to Cap. For those of you who do know what capping is, I'm sure you know that getting capped on is devastating, as it provides the capping team with 2 points instead of 1, and the psychological impact can tilt entire teams, especially when the cap happens with all or most of the defense still alive. But the causes of caps tend to be poorly understood, beyond just being too far from the objective or not looking in the right spots. There are quite a few ways to get capped on, and the more you recognize these situations, the better you'll be at preventing them. To make it easier for you to think about, I've broken these cause and effect chains down into 6 different components. First, there's excessive distance, which is when defenders are too far away from the objective to prevent the cap. Next, there's poor prediction, which is when defenders don't understand the impact of losing coverage in specific locations. Then there are bad lines, which is when defenders leave gaps in the defense by virtue of the defensive setup itself. Next, there's map ignorance, which is when defenders aren't aware of a specific cap location. Then there's lack of tablet awareness, which is when defenders fail to check their tablets after critical deaths occur. And finally, there's fear of death, which is when defenders prioritize survival over preventing a cap. More often than not, these categories combine to create the situations which open up caps. Let's review some footage to see how each of these categories manifest themselves. Let's start with a cap from a recent scrim that Tempo did against Pantheon. In this particular situation, we had several of these factors I mentioned before at play, namely poor prediction, excessive distance, lack of tablet awareness, and a fear of death. Things really start to go downhill when Lampy, who is the last one directly on objective, goes down and there are smokes all around objective. This is a clear indicator of a cap setup, but Rangu has not moved. A lack of tablet awareness has fed into poor prediction, which means that Rangu is not sure exactly what's going on and he doesn't understand the consequence of losing Lampy on the objective. He had gotten a bit of tunnel vision and triggered a fear of death because he had been engaged from the east side, and as a result, he ended up with excessive distance and simply could not rotate back in time once he realized what was going on. You can see how each of these factors feed into each other. With one check of the tablet, a lot of this could have been prevented. Likewise, a better understanding of the defense itself could mean that he could predict what would happen if the person on objective went down. And because he didn't realize he was by himself, he tried to stay alive for too long, which is what we call fear of death. At the end of the day, like many things in Onward, one mistake triggered a whole cascade of problems, and that is really the story of caps in general. Next, let's analyze a cap on the notorious Kiot objective during a scrim between Tempo and Blaze. This is a case of bad lines because we had 2 people in the match who were not terribly familiar with us at this point, and there was some ad hoc planning going on. Additionally, we had one person not load in who was supposed to cover the west. If you look at the minimap, you can see there is exactly 0 coverage on the west side. This is a pretty serious problem because Blaze is sending everybody through the west side. 0 gets in, kills Winky, and because it happened so fast, nobody can react in time to do anything about it. Brass tries to check, but it is too late. This defense was designed to fail from the very beginning because there was no coverage on an entire side, and because this side was uncovered, it left everything open for an attacker who decides to take that side. Next, let's look at some footage from an IVRL match between Virtual Secret and Forlorn Hope. If you haven't heard about the IVRL, it's the future of VR esports, and you should go sign up at ivrl.org. Take my word for it, I have many seasons of experience and they are the best. The problem with this defense is that they're not checking inside that room. A lot of people don't understand that you can cap from behind that wall, and because they didn't know that, or at least I'm presuming they didn't know that, they didn't check, and that ends up as a cap. Likewise, in this match between Resin Mafia and the Leftovers, where Craftomic gets this kill and then caps in a spot which I think most people up to this point didn't even realize was a cap spot. Both of these caps were a result of information asymmetry. One side knew more about the map than the other, and if you don't have that knowledge, it can cost you dearly in a match. The natural next step from here is to think about how you can prevent these factors from ruining your defenses. Each one requires a slightly different type of adjustment. For excessive distance, it's important to understand how long it will take each defender to rotate from their position into a place where they can defend the OBJ. This means doing free roams to figure out that timing and making sure any flankers you send don't get too greedy. Poor prediction is usually a result of a failure to plan and/or a lack of experience. Players need to have the game sense and the understanding of the overall defensive scheme to know what to do if other players go down in specific areas. What lines are now open? Who can plug those holes? How long will it take for those rotations to happen? These are all questions you need to be able to answer. That often comes through free roams, through practicing, and through team planning sessions. Bad lines are the result of poor planning in most cases because critical pathways to the OBJ aren't being covered or are too easily exploited by the enemy team. Teams that struggle with this need to spend more time out of the game itself and more time free roaming to evaluate their lines and then plotting them on maps to ensure they have supporting lines and everything else I talked about in my How to Plan a Defense video. Map ignorance is driven by a lack of experience more often than not, and you can help get rid of it by opening up a private uplink lobby, setting the timer and round limits to max, then getting everyone on MARSOC to explore the limits of the cap radius for each objective. Unfortunately, Onward does not have a cap training module, and probably never will, so that's the best we can do for right now. Lack of tablet awareness is about having a system everyone can use as a heuristic. What I always tell my players is to check your tablets every time you hear gunfire and aren't sure what the result is. For example, if there isn't a callout attached to it, and to constantly communicate so they can perceive right away if they're alone. Fear of death is solved by instilling the idea that death is always better than getting capped on. There are situations, such as a 1v5 on a vulnerable objective like Kiot, that it doesn't make sense to do anything but try to Rambo your way to a few kills on your way to the graveyard. Everyone loves an exciting clutch, but don't attempt that at the expense of your team's ability to win the match. I could probably do a video about each one of these factors, but I'll stop myself for now. What have you struggled with on defense? Let me know in the comments. That's all I've got for now. This is Theta, signing off.
Don't go there. You're gonna get your head taken out. I didn't even know you could go behind this building. I always thought there was an invisible wall.